Sup Shredders, my name is Logan aka Spiderhands, and welcome to the SP Patrons review today that I'm making for Yu-Yo as part of their custom monthly music review. And if we switch over to here, we have ourselves a track on the screen. This is a song by NONA REEVES titled Gaga-Rin. And we're going to listen through this track from start till finish, and we're going to hear what we think. Let's go, let's do it. Gaga-Rin. Billboard. Very curious. Bit of Cyrillic there. A bit of radio static, obviously. Very atmospheric immediately. Oh, funky groove though. Great work with the kicks and those and the bass. I mean, like the 16th note groove on those hi-hats alongside those other instruments, and the inclusion now of the synth, so wonderful. Oh, and there's a shaker as well. That's dope. That's a cool move there. A little bit of modulation on that pitch wheel there. Sick, man. You could use the falsetto voice, actually. I think that resonates on top of all the other elements, especially as the bass and the guitar and mixer. There's a lot of sub-resonance there. So you really do need to go into that upper register to get heard amongst it. Full note accent on that bass line there. Easy to follow along to. I mean, it's so funky as hell, man. It's got almost a city pop kind of vibe to it with the way the synth verses are working on top of that, you know. I like the fact that the drummer and the keyboardist provided those backings and that those vocals came in on the sides. They were really nice and warm and really nice to listen to. Really charming textures included there. Peppy little lead there to counter the lack of vocals. Great choice. Okay, so I think I'm starting to get a feel for what this track's all about. There's an interesting filtering to those toms that I think is trying to sort of they're trying to get the toms to not sort of counter too much into what's happening with the guitar and bass parts and how bright and shiny they are alongside the keys, you know, in a sense. Oh, a vocoder? Hey, back to the color, man. Dope. It's got like a kind of VHS aesthetic with it, you know, an old-timey kind of 80s. Oh, sequential circuits. That's a very fancy synthesizer. That's a lot of fun. These guys are rolling with some really cool kit. And that cool response there with the vocals and the da-da-da-da-da on the guitars is fantastic. It's interesting that they have the Russian sort of imagery there at the start with all the stuff happening between the States and Russia in the 80s there. The space flight and everything like that. I know it happened earlier than that, but still. Oh, fizzy guitar solo time. Really sassy tone to that, actually. A lot of high-end resonance there, but I didn't get as much clarity to the solo as I would have wanted. I think there was potentially, in my opinion, a little bit too much fuzz to that distortion tone on that lead guitar. it left a lack of, I don't know, solidity on those notes, which is not ideal for me personally, but for the aesthetic of the track, especially with the reverb tails they're having on it, you know, it's fine. I mean, I think it's great to have the more of the vocoder stuff going in. It was, to me, I felt as if they could have had another instrument have a lead melody over top, as opposed to just the focus on the guitars. I know we have that synth lead as the center idea. And the recording quality is fantastic. I like how they sound. It's definitely like a tally tone, you know? Telecaster tone. And it's kind of fantastic how they've stacked these different instrumental layers on top here, just with the drum groove keeping it moving forward. I mean, it's creative. It's funky as hell with the vocal modulation though, dude. Great use of vocal modulation. I do wonder if it's going through that synthesizer and then coming back out. Maybe that's how they're getting that tone, or whether, I don't know whether they're doing that or whether they've got it as a post fix in the studio, but either way, it's sick, man. Is he saying you're so fine? Because that's the kind of groove and vibe I get from this, man. It's kind of neat. They've definitely staged EQing on some of these instruments to make room for others, like in the lack of high-end resonance on the drums to make more room for the guitar and bass. I suppose this is just letting us out. Yeah. They're obviously really enamored and comfortable with the motif they've put forward here, and they've definitely done some interesting stuff with it, with the various lead sections, yeah. Almost a cappella-ish guitar parts. The focus on their vocal modulation there. Nona Reeves, Forever, Forever on sale. Oh, so that was released in 2014. Crazy, dude. So I'm wondering if this video was released before YouTube had like the 1080p high definition setting on it, because if that was the case, then it explains why the drums sounded a little bit flat. They tend to do that, especially if it's a real upload, but I think this is the original website. Yeah, it's the original one. Was this in 1080p? Oh, never mind then. What is ambient mode? I hope that isn't affecting the way it sounds. I'll have to check it out in post. And this is the conclusion of my SP Patrons review that I did for Yo of a track by Nona Reeves titled Gagarin. If I'm not mistaken, I think Gagarin was like part of the space project that Russia was involved in. I'm not quite sure how the music relates to that, but I think it's just kind of the idea of the funkiness of going through space, man. That space travel stuff, especially with the vocoder on the vocals, you know. And I think also some of those kind of synthy melodies are very futuristic, so that made sense. I don't have a copy of the lyrics here, which is fine. Again, I don't need the lyrics to be able to appreciate music. But yeah, it was a great song. A great song. I enjoyed my time with what I could hear, like You're So Fine. So I don't know if they're talking about like maybe aliens being fine or like someone else like that. I don't know, man. It's cool either way. Great track. I think that The vocals themselves from the singer, you know, they were solid, man. They were really competent. I was really happy with the confidence in that falsetto. I like the fact that we had really good stage presence, comfortable in head chest voice. Like, it was a great performance. You knew they'd been doing it for a while, and they were happy with what they were doing, where they were at, and how they expressed themselves. And the note choices were fantastic there. I think that the pad-like effect created by the non-modulated and modulated backing vocals on the sides there from the keyboardist and drummer were also fantastic. I liked the extra bit of warmth and sort of heft they gave that part of the mix. That was fantastic, and they knew how to notch themselves to work well with the chord and the harmonies that were present. And it came through really neatly. You know, the vocals were handled really adeptly, and again, even though I don't know what the track is about, I could still appreciate the performance for what it was, and I liked the melodies and harmonies that were in place. And again, I also liked the vocal modulation use of the synthesizer with the vocals later on there for effect and stylistic interpretation. I think that was appropriate and made sense with the rest of the elements of the mix. I mean, the track itself is like 6 minutes long, so it's not a quickie. You know, there's obviously some size to it, and in a track like this, you really cannot afford to have filler. I think that you could easily justify the vast majority of this track. I mean, you came in with the various instrument and electronic bits, and you had like some really lovely little bits of combination of, like, you know, again, the guitar, the bass, the drums, the synths, the pads, etc. You know, they were excellent. You had different ways of doing the vocals there. And even though I didn't get everything at once, when it eventually came in, like if we go back to the start of the track, right? You know, starting with the guitar and the drums and everything like that. And then you eventually have everything else come in, like the bass guitar, the synths, etc. And then the vocals with a shaker, singing with a shaker. You know, when you're not to bring in everything at once, it was funky enough with the 16th note groove. Maybe the shaker was at the start. But it was really cool, I think, from a video perspective or from an audio-visual perspective, to see the different instruments and the different people playing stuff and to understand where that comes in and where that was captured. So I think that was a smart idea. I did like the music video for this, even if I didn't necessarily get more of an understanding about what the song was about from it. It was just to show them actually performing stuff, and I think that's really neat. There was a clear da 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 da. I mean, there's a clear melody there on the synth that was like the lead there, and it came in when the vocals weren't there. And I think that was a good choice. We clearly knew when we had to have a main lead element there. And we had like a guitar solo a little bit later on, which was kind of dope, although I couldn't really get a good grasp of the voicing, especially at that really quick end part there. It sounded like a lot was going on, but I couldn't really interpret it. And maybe I just need to really focus on that bit, or maybe it's deliberately meant to be kind of like a flutter or like a disorientation. Maybe that's the point of it. And later on, you know, when we had the extra vocal harmonies coming in with the modulation and stuff, and other sort of lead bits coming over top, it became very textured and very busy. But we didn't have that the whole way. We had a gradual sort of development across the track of the song there. Whenever it came in, we still didn't have everything at once. We had little bits of an indication that we were going to do, again, octave shifts or something like that, or add some synthy parts to the singing, you know. And I suppose you could have assumed that we're going to have a guitar solo, and we're going to have like a focus on the guitar parts by themselves. I did also like that we had the 5-part guitar sort of tracking bit, like maybe 4 minutes in. I think that was honestly more interesting to listen to than the solo section. I'm not quite sure whether that could have been like a rocket taking off or something like that. Maybe it was getting ready to blast off into space or something like that. I don't know, man. I'm kind of reaching for straws here, but I'm doing my best. There was potential here that I think was explored for the most part. I think that we had a similar bass line and chord progression throughout the entirety of the time. There might have been changes with the extensions and the added notes on top, or how the lead elements, sort of upper and mid-range elements, harmonized on top of the bass lines. But we had one main idea that we kind of grooved along to the entire time, and I think it was catchy enough that it did us justice for the most part. Towards the end of the song, maybe like the last minute or so, I was kind of like, yeah, okay, I think I've got the hang of everything here. I don't really feel the need to hear more of it. Not because I wanted it to stop, but because I understood it. I think I understood what the music was trying to tell me. And it was cool. They tried to, with a longer form like track, I guess what I'm trying to say is that if you have a longer track, you need to make sure that it is interesting and that there's enough development until the very end. So what I want from, like, if I was to listen to another track from this band, I want them to put something else at the end to either kind of bring it up, or maybe like a change in pace, or like a change in key signature. That's where I think a change in key signature can be good. Although I think the idea itself, the harmonies there with the guitars and the bass and the keys, was potentially too complicated for that to really be justifiable. Also, they wanted a solid groove just to move along to. I was kind of blown away by the fact that there was that amount of variety on the drums, but that they weren't working with the 16ths, and that Shaker was doing that. I think that maybe just having the 8th note or quarter note accent on some of those kicks and snare parts there was probably more powerful there, so I can get behind that. It's fine, But yeah, I think there was enough to keep me interested, but I'm glad that the song stopped where it was. The performance on behalf of all the different instrumentalists was damn near flawless. We didn't have any notes out of place. They clearly were confident playing their respective instruments, and they stuck in their lanes and didn't overplay. There were no points where it sounded too much was being done. It's like they're clearly a band who's got a great chemistry, and they know how to work together really proficiently, and they understand the value of just keeping together and establishing a concept for a listener and not overstaying its welcome. Like because they did change stuff, you know what I mean? Like I'm trying not to contradict myself too much, but I'm mostly like super duper happy with how it was played and how it was written. And this is a fantastic impression of Nona Reeves, because I don't think I've really listened to much of them, if at all. So it's good to hear more of their stuff. Hopefully they're still doing well now, as this was recorded almost 10 years ago, or released almost 10 years ago. I think I said 8 years ago, actually, but that's okay. Look, I think that the recording, mixing, and mastering was great. I liked the sound of the vocals as well as the different instrument parts. They were nicely mixed together, and there was a nice leveling of the different elements there, a little bit of compression of some of those parts. Again, the drums sounded a bit flat to me, a bit of high-end resonance missing from some of those tom hits, but I think, again, that was a deliberate EQing decision so that the guitar, bass, and synths could occupy that mid to high range there. And they didn't have a super duper resonant, like in a low end kind of bass guitar there, where they wanted to be sort of more funky and more athletic and move around the fretboard a bit more, so I can understand that from that perspective. That's absolutely fine, so I've got no real complaints about that. I can understand it from a studio perspective with the EQing. It was nice and wide in the stereo field, though. I think that was pretty dope. There's lots of different interesting elements there moving around the place. It sounded very full. Not everything came in again at once, so there was dynamic range and changes perceived loudness there. When the guitar came in for that really short solo, things sort of came down a little bit, and then they went back up with that flurry there. And again, when the guitarists had like the 5-track section, things became a little bit less intense there, because you were simply listening to the guitar as opposed to having the story kind of told to you again, Maybe more of this track would have meant more to me if I'd understood the language natively. In fact, I can almost guarantee that would be the case. But at the same time, it was nice and loud without pumping. Clearly, this is a professional band who are very skilled and know how to write music that they're really happy with, and that I think a lot of people will appreciate. I'm a dopamine-addled kind of... I really need it to tick all the boxes for me to get super excited about something. And I think just if we'd had a bit more variety in the instrumental performance in the last part of the song, that would have been a very, 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 very strong track for me. Especially with all the interesting stuff with those synths and guitars and everything like that in the first part. But I'm still very happy with it. Thank you for watching this review of Nona Reeves with Gagarin. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please go check out their various social medias and a YouTube page, and stay cool and stay safe. And please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as they need the help more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world. And I'll catch you in the next SP Patrons video. Spiderhands out.